Let's come to order. It's 4:01. Let's have a roll call.
Bill Connor,
Here.
Ron Humboldt,
Here.
Catherine Kenny, Angie Quinn,
Here.
Thad Taylor,
Here.
Dennis Otto,
Here.
Lee Trucks.
Here. Okay, approval of agenda. Can I
So-
have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, I think we've approved that. Now, if anyone has any conflict of interest of anything they'd like to declare? Hearing nothing, moving on to the approval of the minutes. You've all received the minutes of the last meeting, March 1st. Can I have a motion to approve?
To approve the minutes.
Support.
Moved and supported to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Public comment on agenda-related items. Hearing nothing, moving on to new business. 95 Maple Street.
All right, I am here, one of the reasons I'm here today is on behalf of the library, talking about this particular item. I sit on the board of the Manistee County Public Library, and they want to install some new windows. There's a sheet here in your packet on the rear of the building. There's 10 windows here. The bottom ones are going to stay the same, but the 10 windows here are going to be replaced. They're not the original windows. You've got the specs on those windows in your packet as well. And the reason I'm coming is I would typically just approve this under routine repair and maintenance, but since I'm on the library board, just thought I would dot our I's and cross our T's. If anybody questioned why Mark was on the library board, just went ahead and signed it. So we just kind of, Kitty and I just figured we would just come, I would just come to the HDC to get their approval on those windows, and that's why I'm here.
Mark, is it just an efficiency issue? Better?
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's a lot of air coming through those, and I think those were installed in like 73 or 74, that those sliders that kind of come up, and there's some gaps, and it's, efficiency.
So I can't tell from the description, they look the same. Will
I
they
believe they
match
will.
the first one?
Dark bronze framing. So I think they'll from how I understand it, they'll look the same.
So in terms of, I mean, when you're thinking about windows, you want to make sure like the width of
Yeah.
the trim and everything, and it looks like the upper window on each of those is a little bit bigger than the lower window, or sometimes it's just from I'm just checking to make sure that we won't notice it when we're looking at it from the street.
As far as I know, it'll be the same.
Okay,
It's from far as I know, the color will be the same. Dark bronze framing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you know this, and we all know
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
That's what we're ultimately
Yeah.
making sure is that the exterior.
Yeah, it looks the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as I know, Angie, they'll be looking the same.
Okay.
Do you think the ratio between the top and the bottom is a critical issue, Angie?
Yeah, I think that what is on the second floor should look exactly like what is on the first floor. That is how historic preservation generally works.
You mean
So like the
glass
one.
brick?
No, I'm sorry. The second and the third floor, not the first floor. So I guess I assume this is a basement.
Yeah, that's a basement. Yeah.
So the windows in the middle are the ones that are not changing. The windows on the top are the ones that you're changing. And we're going to ask that those match the
No,
ones.
both.
10 windows altogether.
Ah.
Yeah. Both floors here.
In that case, okay.
Yeah.
Never
Look alike.
Okay.
So you're saying that the ratio is not important as long as they're all identical?
Since they're not the original windows, I think that at this point, that as long as there's not, I mean, you're not changing the window opening size, you're not changing anything else about that.
No.
So at the end of the day, no one's really gonna notice.
Do we have any more comment?
Sorry, I misread it.
Oh, that's okay, no.
Just one
Would
of the.
someone like to make a
sets.
motion?
Motion to approve. Or to authorize us a certificate.
Second.
Been moved and second that we approve the application for the certificate of appropriateness for the Manistee Library. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You got your certificate, Mark?
Yes, yep, thank you.
Amendment to the zoning ordinance signs.
Yes. Yeah, so this has been something we've all been working on for the past several months. At our last meeting, I think we got a good idea of what you guys would like to see for the regulation. I did consult with the city attorney on the regulations, and really what it ultimately ended up being is more so modifying our signage guidelines, but then also actually pointing to those signage guidelines within the zoning ordinance. I think that's really important, especially when we look at like section 2103 exempt signs, so that people can really go and look what would be exempt for signs in the historic district in Manistee. So the language that I had put together for the guidelines is modifying the kind of definition under sign types on page 2 for window signs to include that no more than 50% of glass maximum. And I kind of mirrored that for the language used for the upper story window signs for consistency. And then adding a definition for temporary window signs. And this is something that the city attorney, I did ask about the political signs. We can't ban political signs. And he was even hesitant on including language that limits businesses to only displaying things that relate to like the business on site and products sold. We talked a little bit about off-premise signs and like how people can put up little, you know, promotional flyers and things like that. So within this definition, I had at first it was saying only for items such as sales, products, and information related to the business on site, but I changed that to such as to kind of lead into that, but it's not necessarily limiting to it. And ultimately what I had talked about with George is that, you know, we can always go in and make things more restrictive in the future if we see a need to, but it's really hard to like undo things once we incorporate the regulation. So if we need to come back to this at a future point, because I know this all kind of spurred from people putting up things that weren't necessarily related to their business in their windows, but we could, you know, look to go back on it, but hopefully most people generally will follow that it's items such as, you know, sales, business, or items that your business sells, information related to your business on site.
So Katie, the city attorney's good with the language?
Yes, he is good with the language. He really liked the idea of referencing the guidelines in the zoning ordinance, and yeah, just pulling out those couple of items, because and then the final amendment is the exempt signs kind of table that we have there, and adding the temporary window signs and then the temporary upper window signs. And really, I feel like, okay, so yeah, I was just kind of doubling down to cover both, you know, upper and lower window stories. So we pulled out, in there I had a statement that had said must be related to business on site, so we pulled that away. And then I had asked him about the political signs, and he said no go. I said I thought that was a shot in on the dark, but you know, worth asking. So those 3 sections are what are being proposed to be amended for the guidelines, and then the 2 sections in the zoning ordinance. And I'll take any questions on that, but otherwise I would request, I guess it could be 1 motion or potentially 2, because we're going to need a motion to send these guidelines to SHPO for their review, which is something I wasn't entirely aware of when I had originally put this memo together, but a motion to send them to SHPO. And then I think just to make sure we cover everything, next month we can take another motion to finally approve the guidelines after they go to SHPO. And then maybe a separate motion to recommend the Planning Commission amends the zoning ordinance for those sections, because they will have to be the body to actually amend the zoning
First one you
ordinance.
want now is just to send it on to SHPO, and then next month we'll take up the other two.
Yeah, we could do it that way, or I could get started on the planning commission amendments. I think, or the zoning ordinance amendments for the planning commission, because regardless of if SHPO approves the guidelines or not, I think it's still important that we could include that reference in the zoning ordinance.
My only thought was if for some reason SHPO doesn't approve,
Right,
you know, maybe we need to wait for their approval before we do something.
yeah, that makes
was my only
sense.
concern.
Should we, I guess, approve them as they've now been written up so that you can send them off to SHPO, or do we want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what the
Yeah,
proper thing to do would be to approve the proposed changes to the signing section of the guidelines. Right?
Yeah, approve them for SHPO review, but now that we're going over this, I guess you guys could approve them with the understanding that, you know, if SHPO says they're good, you say they're good, but I could always bring it back one more for a final approval after we know that SHPO has okayed them. So
Well, we
really,
approve-
right now, it would just be to send it to SHPO.
Yeah, why don't we approve them for the purposes of sending to SHPO?
If you make that a motion, I'll support it.
Okay. I had a question.
Yes.
On page 2, where it's under window signs, the addition says no more than 50% of glass maximum. Is that a planning language? Because it seems like it's kind of torture to me. What you mean is 50% of can be covered, right?
Yeah, we can modify that. I was just kind of mirroring the existing language
Then go ahead with
for,
it. I didn't want to
yeah,
create a
right.
new,
But it is kind of an odd phrasing.
just leave it then, never mind.
Okay,
I'll make that motion that we approve the amendment subject to, or for purposes of submitting to SHPO, right?
yes, yep, you got it.
For their counter approval.
I'll support that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Proposed changes to the signage section of the guidelines, section 2. Any more discussion?
Katie, would you want to put down 50% of glass square foot area? Now, depending on size of the window, that applies to square footage no matter what it is. If it's 50, it's going to be 25. If it's 10, it can only be 5. That's,
I think adding something like that might provide a little bit more clarity. I don't know, I'd leave that up to you guys.
I don't have a problem with it the way it is.
Yeah.
why is that? It encompasses different sizes. If you say 50%, no more than 50% of glass square foot area.
Well, I
Instead, if you
think,
got a 10 by 10, it can't be more than 5. If it's 20 by 20, it can't be more than 10, right?
I think that's what it says.
Well, she wanted to clarify that a little bit for the amount of signage, right?
Well, right now it currently reads the no more than 50% of glass maximum, so I think that's kind of implied, the entirety of the glass covered. But, you know, if that doesn't read clearly, then I would be willing to amend it, however you guys want to do
You haven't
that.
had any problems that you're aware of on clarity for that?
Not for the 20% glass maximum on the upper story windows, but it's not something that we usually run into,
Right.
very often, but.
Yeah, you know, when we were looking at it last month, you know, some of the businesses have, you know, 3-part windows, or they have 5-part windows or whatever. And so I think the glass maximum kind of says the totality of the windows we're looking at on your first floor.
Right.
I think it kind of covers it.
Okay,
I don't know. I mean,
It's fine with me. I would suggest we just leave the wording as is, and if in the future there's some clarity.
if there's
issues,
questions on it, we can always come back to it. Okay,
Vision, yeah.
yeah,
If a business, if SHPO thinks that it's clear,
yeah, they'll look at it too, so if they question it, then I'll definitely bring that back to you guys.
There's 2 big windows. Is it 50% of each window then?
it's 50% of the total.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you got one big one, that's one thing, but if you got, what if you got 2 big ones divided? Can they cover all of one, or how are we encompassing that?
Yeah, and we talked about last month, in part, it's a safety thing, and not even just
Oh,
a
right.
our looking at it from a historic point of view is, can someone still see in, you know, from a safety and security issue? So that 50%, if one window's covered but the other one's completely clear, then you still get that. So yeah, that's 50% of the total.
But it's two separate windows is what I'm getting at, so how are we looking at that really?
As
You
the-
see what I'm saying? If you got two big windows,
what you're saying.
are we taking, that one can be totally covered because that's half, or if it's divided of any way, is that two separate windows? And each of them can only be 50%.
The way that it's
I don't
written,
know. I just
I
don't
would
know.
interpret how Angie described it,
Right.
unless we wanted to get more specific. No more than 50% glass maximum of each window, then we're breaking it out in each window. But I don't know if that's like your guys' intent.
And I don't think it was, as we were looking at like the existing ones, some of them, you know, like, even like Happy Owl Bookstore, that takes up over half of the specific pane of glass it's on, but then the other two windows next to it have nothing, so the total is 50% or less, you know? I mean, there was no easy way of,
Yeah, and now that you're describing that, I would say that generally the sign regulations do go off of like total square footage of the building, that we don't break it up for sections. So thinking with that in mind, I would say that this language is still fitting for even covering, you know, one whole window and then you're leaving one blank, as long as you're meeting that 50%. I think that would still be appropriate and in tune with the other sign regulations that we deal with.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
and then do we make a motion to go for planning at this point, or you want to wait until we hear that?
I think that's up to you guys. I don't, whether the signage guidelines stay the same or approved by SHPO, there isn't any, it just references the signage guidelines as they exist. So it won't have any impact on the amendment to the zoning ordinance if we wanted to push that forward at this time.
Wouldn't cause any confusion if we had different languages?
No, because the zoning ordinance amendment simply just states signage requirements in the historic district subject to HDC guidelines signage number 2.
Okay.
And then it says it for exempt signs as well. So it's just,
Specific verbiage. in it.
right, it's
Okay.
referencing the document as a whole.
Okay. Well, then that would make sense if you want to, that's your idea, to send it on to the planning commission.
Yeah, so I would make a motion that we send this proposal on to planning commission so they can incorporate it into,
Cool, thank you.
Do I hear a second?
Yes, second.
Ron seconded?
Just a question then, supposing SHPO has a problem, do we pull it back from the planning
It's not
commission?
gonna change, Bill, because all this does, the change to the zoning ordinance just refers to the historic district commission guidelines. So whatever the changes might be in the historic district guidelines is gonna be subsumed by the,
Okay, so this just refers back.
Yeah, no specific language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
did we vote on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right, where are we at now? Permit review.
Yes, so I've got a few new permits on here for you guys. And then I know last month it was requested that I send you the administratively approved permits after the fact, so I did include those with site plans with this round of permit review. And if you guys like that, I can do that every month so you can see what Mark has approved. And we've just got a couple signs. You'll see the 3 permits that you guys approved at our last month's meeting, including Joe Mathewson's windows, our tree lights for Manistee Proud, and the Outsider. And then in addition to that, we've had, oh, and also the 308 River Street catwalk, which discussions have continued with the city on that. So it seems like it's heading in the right direction for them to be able to actually accomplish that. So we'll see what happens. But I did include site plans, so you'll see the Outsider did actually propose a slight amendment to their sign that you guys approved, and Mark was comfortable with administratively approving that. It's even less square footage than what they had originally proposed, and it's still very much in tune with what you guys had proposed, but I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to see that. And then Snyder's.
I don't understand that. What is different?
I don't know if I have their other
Is it just the
Sign-
size of it or something? or-
It's kind of the design of it. The colors are still the same. I know their little carry out and food drink that had like 3 tiers to it before, and now it's just the 2 little tabs. And then, God, yeah, I think the original one had like a burger in it, the sign. Yeah. So it's not all that different. It's still the same still the same kind of look, same style. It was just modified and something that would need to be, that I wouldn't approve myself. So we amended their existing permit and Mark signed off on that one.
Maybe I'll explain the Snyder's one a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, on to Snyder's,
The folks at Snyder's came to see me a couple months ago, and that building that they are located in is not, that's not the original building that Snyder's was located in. Snyder's was actually located in a couple different spots. But the building that used to be on that spot burned to the ground in 1965, along with 2 other buildings that same month. So just happenstance, supposedly. But there were 3 big fires in Manistee in January of 65, and that was one of them. So a new building was constructed on that site, and the front of that site was this big, huge plastic thing that covered the whole top of the building. Lee, you remember it. Remember the blue, and it was all this big plastic covered up. Well, that was up there from the 60s until 1997. And 1997 is when they fixed up the front of that building. And then I think several years ago, they kind of toyed around with the color palette a little bit. They came to see me, and I approved their project simply because I think it was a no-brainer. All the wood in the upper portion of this is completely rotted. And so in order to combat that, they're going to replace it with a composite material that looks like wood. And they're going to change the color palette up a little bit with some trim areas, and the main area right here. They're going to put a new sign up there, and then they're going to put a new door here. And these are the specs on the door. And then as well as that, they're going to put some lights up here as well. The lighting that they're proposing, that they have is throughout, there's a couple spots throughout the district that has that same type of lighting. The doors are going to be, I think, very similar to what they have now, but just new doors. So I felt comfortable in approving that for them, and I worked with them for a couple hours on trying to get all that approved. So I felt it was a pretty basic approval. If they were going to completely change the front of the building, the look, the style of it, then of course I would have sent that on up the ladder to you guys. But with what they're proposing, it seemed like a kind of a no-brainer. So
What they're proposing is almost maintenance.
yeah, and essentially that's what it is. It's routine repair and maintenance. Maybe not routine, but it's maintenance. And so under that, I felt confident that it would go and keep in line with what's there now and what was approved there years ago.
So it's interesting, being new to the community, I assumed that, when I first saw that, I assumed at some point in the past, someone mucked it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they did as good as they could with something that was mucked up. So not knowing that it actually was a new building.
Burned to the ground, yeah.
Yeah. So what I think what I like about it is it fits really well on the street, but it doesn't pretend to be historic.
I agree.
And I think the changes that they're making continue that.
Yeah.
I've heard people call it phony colony.
Yeah.
To make it look too much like it is of the period.
Yeah.
I think the only thing is the window, the doors, are just they're verging on that, but I think they're okay. So,
I understand.
yeah. But yeah, I think otherwise you're right. It's pretty much, we're talking maintenance. They need to do something if they've got rotted wood and it's not changing the facade.
I remember when was originally done, 97 you said?
Yeah, I think it was 97 when they redid it.
At that point on the fact that it wasn't really a historic building and they didn't want to try to imitate one of the historic buildings, and so that's what they came up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it does a good job, because I mean, it picks up features that are on the street.
It fits in, but it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're at permit review.
Yep, and then we just have one more. So this is the new tenant in the Gardine building. They applied for a sign permit, Manistee Home Decor and Antiques, just a simple vinyl window graphic. So that is it for the permit review. I don't know if you guys have questions on any of the other applications on there, but the rest are all just kind of ongoing.
I just have one comment.
Projects.
It's exciting to see the property owners investing in their buildings.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, the Outsider, I think, is gonna be a really, really cool one. And Snyder's will look great.
Public comments and communications concerning items not on the agenda. Correspondence.
None.
DDA Executive Director. Museum Curator. Planning and Zoning Administrator.
I don't have anything else for you guys.
Member discussion.
I just would again note that I'll be absent from the meeting in May.
You know, this is probably the wrong place to talk about this, but on April 21st and 22nd, there's going to be the Great Lakes Environmental Festival downtown in Manistee. It's going to be at the West Shore Building. There's a movie at the Vogue for kids. There's a expo at the Wagner Center, the Senior Center. Inasmuch as historic renovation and restoration of buildings produces up to 90% less carbon than new construction does, would it be appropriate for us to pass a resolution supporting the Great Lakes Environmental Festival?
No, and you said, is it on the 22nd on Earth Day, or are they doing it the day before?
21st and 22nd.
So both days. You know, historic preservation is like the original environmentally sound activity. I mean, most people who are trying to do something green are trying to reuse whenever they can. I think it would be appropriate. I'm also wondering if we should have a booth there about historic preservation.
My only question is how could we get, I mean, we don't meet again before for the 22nd, how would we get a resolution prepared and then adopted in time to support that?
Katie, would it be appropriate to develop a resolution and do a email vote?
No.
Yeah, we can't really, we can't take action via email. And I guess I would just want to understand exactly what you would want that resolution to entail. Like, I understand it's a resolution of support, but like what just the event itself, or what exactly we would be.
I don't see there's any way we could really do anything of support except sort of the event in itself. I mean, it's going to have a lot of aspects. There are, I think, like 20 presentations that are going to be on Friday and Saturday. It's everybody from, you know, solar heating to the Little River Band's attempts at restoration of wild rice and sturgeon and things like that, to worm culture. You know, there's really quite a nice selection of different programs. And also, there will be some videos that are produced by young people from the local area. And,
And what is the general intent of the two-day event?
the general intent is public awareness and education
Of
Environmental
of environmental
issues.
concerns. there's a pretty strong emphasis on water,
Right.
but it's not limited to water.
You
Is
know-
it too late to take any action on that? Or?
Personally, I applaud what they're doing, but I don't know that this commission has a nexus to that, to come out in support of it. That's my only concern.
It does sound like it would be a great, like, letter to the editor, though, if someone wanted to write it.
I would agree. Lee's pretty good with a pen.
That's what I was,
If we passed a motion authorizing our chairman or
write a letter and.
whatever your title is.
I'd be comfortable if we just did, giving some, recognition to the people that put it together and understanding that, that topic is important and we just,
Yeah, and I think the idea of historic reservation being really a green project is not well understood by the public.
No.
as long as we make,
They think of it in terms of, historic tourism and, things like that.
as long as we can make that connection perfectly clear so that we have some reason for doing it.
Well, and I'm thinking if this is going to be an annual event, I'm not sure if this is the first year it's occurring, that maybe that could be like a goal of the Historic District Commission in the coming year. If you guys wanted to establish that as maybe participating in the event next year, if you feel like that's worthwhile and want to educate on the pros of historic preservation and how that relates to green energy. That could be, something that I think is appropriate that the commission could do, and then we could show, because I'm thinking of that annual report for the certified local units, like they ask about public outreach and what extras has the commission done this year for that certification. Right. And for this year with staff turnover and such, I didn't have a whole lot to put in there for us, but that could be a great extra thing that if the commission wants to take it upon themselves to be more involved with something like that, we could look into that being a goal of next year to actually participate in the event.
And we've talked a little bit at the last few meetings about the idea of putting together an actual printed version of guidelines that we could hand out to people. And that's something I think that, when the SHPO does those CLG grants that they do every
Right.
year, I think that kind of thing qualifies, doing like educational materials then that you have for the public. We're a few months out from being able to apply for that, but there could be money there that we wouldn't have to go to the city budget to do
Right.
necessarily. So
I really do think the idea that you said about having a booth at the expo is probably a good idea, Goes right along with it.
I mean, even just to educate the public on preservation a little bit, because we approve upgrades and everything as long as it holds to the design. So we're involved in environmental issues like windows, doors, you know what I mean? Technically we are. Yeah.
Exactly.
So actually, it does fall in the line of what they're doing.
Part of the Historic District Commission is to encourage people to do the restoration too.
Well, given the late date that this has come to the commission, I would much rather do something along the lines of Katie's suggestion is maybe, I need to know more about the event and what all it entails, and then maybe we could start formulating some kind of a plan to get involved and support wholeheartedly next year.
So I've seen this done at other Earth Day events with other preservation groups, like they actually will bring a wooden window and they'll show you, how do you take out the existing putty? How do you, determine whether or not this is one that can be salvaged or it's one that needs to be replaced? I mean, all we need is a window and someone can
Right.
replace that,
You could also have an old style window and a new style replacement. Here's what we're doing to help environmentalists. It's still the same design, but we're incorporating newer materials for blah, 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 blah. So there, we are kind of pretty much directly
Well,
involved.
not only that, we're encouraging maintenance of old materials, not replacing
And
things with new. but-
Right, right. So it does, although I said that, I don't know that we have time to pull something together
Yeah.
this year, but.
that is one thing, and number two, just, you know, my ignorance on the whole event and what is all going on. I'd feel like we're sticking our neck out right now, so, you know, I'd feel, you know, if we get more information on it, Lee just provided me with a website so I can get some more information.
glef.us.
Yeah, I can look into it as well and bring it back to you guys next month. I just jotted down some notes, like what does it take to get a booth for this next year? Find out some of those details, and we can hash out what that might look like if that's something you guys want to pursue.
You know, this is a specific instance, but it really fits in with what we've discussed sort of randomly before about being more proactive in terms of what we're doing. And I mean, I think this just sort of points out that there are things that are happening that maybe we should be looking at, and not, you know, on
I don't
the
disagree.
5th of April when it's going to be in a couple of weeks.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Do you know any of the organizers for the,
Pardon?
do you know any of the organizers for the event?
Me.
So how would somebody get a booth set up to at least give out something, you know, whether it's a historic district map or something, just to say, hey, you know, we do historic preservation here in Manistee, and it's a good thing. I have a few hours on Saturday, probably not on Friday.
glef.us.
But do we have to pay for it? I mean, that's what I'm asking.
There's no charge for anything.
Okay,
No charge
Okay.
for any of the presentations, no charge to any of the exhibitors at the expo. There's no charge at anything. Do you know John Helke?
I don't, but I know Ramona DeGiorgio Benegas has already asked me to give her beads for something she's doing with kids that day.
Well,
So it's,
Ramona's also on the steering committee. for
okay,
that,
okay,
so,
well, I can ask Ramona then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that we need to take any action on that.
Okay.
I think that maybe if I get up the energy, I might write a letter to the editor and see if they do it, see if I can come up with something that seems sensible on my own behalf.
Yep, yeah,
but
that's
to
better.
Discuss the issues that we're talking about with environment and historic preservation.
I would be comfortable with you signing my name as a historic district commission member. I don't know if anybody else would, but I trust you. I've read
Well,
your other letters.
You know, I could easily email everybody a copy of whatever I come up with, and anybody who wants to sign on can sign on.
Does that sound, I mean, that sounds like
And
an
that's
action.
an
Are we
individual-
dabbling into
Or that would be an individual
quorum
endorsement, not a-
discussions
Yeah.
outside of an open meeting?
Yeah, you raise a good point. That might be a technical
Even if it
violation
is-
of Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, even if you guys are kind of like taking it upon yourselves as individuals, because of your appointed positions, you have to be conscious of any type of discussion that involves all of you outside of a meeting that even starts to talk about what you deliberate in these meetings.
So, you know, yeah, that's a good summation.
So it might, yeah, it's one of those things where it might be all right, but it's very much towing the line.
Got it.
Because it's involved with what you guys do here.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to be involved, you know, events like this always could use volunteers. You know, and if you go onto the website, there's a specific place where you can volunteer, and you can volunteer for a chunk of time at a particular place and particular kind of thing to do. So I appreciate it if you take a look at it,
Okay.
if that's possible. Any more member discussion?
I applied for a scholarship for the Michigan Historic Preservation Network with a letter of recommendation that Katie wrote. Thank you, Katie. I have not heard anything yet. I was really hoping
Okay.
that I would hear something
Yeah, I
before
think-
the April 1st prices went up. But we
Okay,
haven't-
isn't it, they're leaving it open till the 9th though?
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, I think
Got it.
they're accepting the scholarships until April 9th.
Okay, so
So
I should
you'll
hear
probably
you
hear
next
back.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, cool.
Any more discussion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.